Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme of gradual tempo shifts or extended tempo shifts, sections of a song that just seem to keep speeding up or keep slowing down over an extended period of time. Today we're going to be looking at something from Led Zeppelin. This track is called In My Time of Dying from the Physical Graffiti album. Let's dive in. See what's going on with Led Zeppelin. Bluesy start right from the beginning. Probably sounds more effective on speakers, but the hard split is really interesting where you're just getting the fuzz here. A lot of microtonality in this too, as the pitch is just consistently in flux. Yeah, before this video is over, I'm gonna check out parts of this on my speakers. I don't think this works very well in headphones, but that's not any issue with the track itself. Interesting dyads there.
Okay.
Yeah, these are really interesting because these two riffs, that one and now this one starts on the downbeat, one starts on the end of the downbeat. And it makes it feel like temporally we're getting shifted around, but we're actually not. It's consistent 4/4 throughout. Cool dueling guitars here. I know it's why y'all come to the channel, but my first thought, having that finished, is yeah, I got a lot of thoughts on this one. I will say, aside from music analysis, which we'll get into in a bit, just some surface level comments I kind of want to make. One, this is super jammy, very much of its time, and something that wore me down a little bit, particularly as we got closer to the end of the track. But the other thing that stood out to me was the post song mic still hot kind of thing. We've heard this in a couple of tracks, but it's kind of rare these days. I think once we shifted to single track recording, I don't know if that was possible or doable back in the tape days. I don't think it was, but this may be something that came about with digital recording when we shifted to recording one track at a time. The bass would record, then the drums would record, then the guitars would record. You can take as many takes as you need for it. But I'm going to assume this was Led Zeppelin, what, 70s, somewhere in that decade? Probably still using tape. The whole band is in the recording studio. And this is it. This was one single 11-minute take. Well, I guess like 10:59 of this song. The mics are still on. You got someone coughing. The vocalist just ad libs cough. And then you have the producer saying, I think that's the one. How about y'all come listen to this and see what you want? And while that's happening, you hear just this little ding, 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 ding. The guitar is just kind of noodling away at the moment. Not really playing anything, just making some sounds. I've heard a couple of tracks where you'll get some of the vocal stuff, particularly. You don't hear this too much with other instruments, in my experience. But a little vocal thing at the end, maybe a cough. There's one track that I can think of off the top of my head from the Used where the song is over. There's like 2 seconds of silence, and then you hear the vocalist say magic. Like he knew that was the take, and they just left that in. But like the whole band just kind of doing whatever for like 15 seconds at the end of a track, you can't really get that anymore. You'd have to record in this more traditional way of getting the whole band together. And we still have people who do this. Audio Tree live sessions are kind of the same thing. It's a very well treated room, pretty much studio quality. You get the whole band together. So it's not like it's something that isn't done at all. It's just less common. So I think that's interesting to hear the ad-libbing at the end of this, and I've always kind of wondered why would you leave that in? Technically, the art is over, but I do like. I guess it's a little bit of the behind the scenes. To me, it feels like it should be a bonus section, and maybe you can interpret that, even though it is in the middle of an album. It'd be like I don't know, I guess some DVDs used to do this. While you were watching it, it would pop up a little button. Hey, we have a behind the scenes footage for this. Would you like to watch it? The interactive DVDs was a big thing at the turn of the century. So I don't know. Maybe that would be analogous to this. But yeah, I find that really interesting when I find songs like that. And the other things, the production, like I said, I'm going to check out on my studio monitors. When I dip out for lyrics, I'm going to listen to it then and kind of see if the stereo imaging is any better, because the hard panning on the headphones is just not great. I kind of adapted to it, but it sounded really awkward with the guitar and vocals even starting on one side and then also appearing on the other without the travel. This is probably because this is true stereo. It's either hard left or hard panned or hard right panned. Whereas, modern stereo has a little bit of both. You can pan it by degrees, and it basically just does volume and EQing adjustment so that your brain will register it as slightly to the left rather than all the way. I don't know the science behind how that works, but I'm sure it's some sort of audio illusion that the brain does a good job of just capturing the vibe of and understanding it the way that it's intended. But anyways, just like a lot of surface level stuff here, Let's get into the track proper though. This is extended tempo shift week, and I find this to be a really interesting one because time is very loose here, like exceptionally loose. I don't know if this was necessarily why this track was suggested, because I don't know that it would be within my idea of this theme, but it absolutely fits. They weren't playing to a metronome, and honestly, I don't think they were incredibly in time with one another. Well, I guess they were in sync well enough, but they just drifted all over. Some sections would speed up a little bit and then slow down and slow down a little more and then speed up. None of it really felt intentional. Maybe it completely is. The only one that felt intentional was the ritardando in the final moments of the track, as he was singing something about I'm dying, something like that, and the song's just crawling to a stop. That felt intentional, but everything else was minuscule. Couple of BPMs over a couple of bars. You don't really notice it as it's moving, but you kind of pick it up. Wait a second. This is a little faster than the same beat just a moment ago. But it never got to a point when you could feel that the drummer was dragging. And this is interesting too, because, or, the drummer or the guitarist or whoever, there never really is a point where like, that instrument specifically is behind everyone else. They kind of stuck together with this shifting tempo. And that makes me think that it was intentional. There's a synergy to this, but I can't really see the purpose of it. It's almost like losing control of your car, hydroplaning or skidding on ice or something like that. And you try to correct it, and the corrections are slow because you kind of slowly start losing your back end this way, and then you kind of correct it, but it's going to keep drifting because there's just no friction. And this sounds like frictionless tempo. It's really interesting. At no point would I ever be able to lock down that this is this tempo at this moment, other than to say that this is probably the intended tempo, and sometimes we are plus or minus 5 BPM from that. And it just feels like it's constantly slipping, but controlled, less like you're losing control of your car and more like you're drifting around a track, intentionally losing control. I find that really interesting in this track, and it's consistent. I was kind of, it is the theme. I am paying more attention to tempo than usual, but I kept finding myself thinking, okay, when do we really have that extended accelerando or extended retardando? And it never really came up until the end, but the tempo is just always in flux too. I'm kind of curious if there is interviews about this track in particular, and the looseness of time. If any of the band members talk about it, bring it up, discuss it, I'd be really interested to hear about that, because this is incredibly unusual, especially since this is a blues song. Blues is kind of a straightforward genre of music, and blues rock ends up being very straightforward as well. And I find this to be true in most of this track. We have an A and a B and a C section. A is the verse, B is the chorus, and C is the bridge. And through that lens, we primarily have 3 guitar riffs in here. Well, the third one is composed of 2 guitar riffs, but it's one musical idea. Very straightforward here. These riffs are generally repeated ad nauseum throughout this track. It is what made the end of it start to wear me down a little bit, as it is 11 minutes based around 4 ideas with various melodies put on top of them. A lot of this track ends up feeling very samey from start to finish. Not the A and the B section and the C section all sound the same, but we spend so much time in the A section, which has its identity, in the B section, which is a variation of that, and the C section, which is kind of closely related to that B section, actually. And so the vibe is generally similar throughout. We have a dreary bluesiness, and then we have an energetic bluesiness, and it's kind of the two flavors you get. And then you get two different riffs on the energetic one. Straightforward. What's interesting is the melodies, the vocals that are put on top of these riffs, the guitar solos and duets and battling guitars that we get on top of these. The chords, the riffs themselves don't really change. The bass lick doesn't really change. The drummer gives us, there's like 3 different drum patterns in here, and we get a plethora of drum fills every once in a while. But for the most part, if you're in a section, you're locked into a drum beat for it. Pretty typical of both blues and blues rock. Again, there isn't a lot of, I would say, progressive elements to this. There isn't a lot of complexity to this. It is rather straightforward, which makes the temporal element really stand out. It's just, I'm really intrigued about that. So the riffs are interesting. The first one is dreary, bit melancholic. It's just a very slow intro. There's a lot of spaciousness to it. The drums are very spacious as well. The vocals, very spacious melodies. You hear the vocals for a bit, and then there's just nothing. I got some guitar stuff filling in the space. Drums will take a bar and a half off between patterns, hit some drums, and then rest for a second or two, come back and hit the drums again. It's quite spacious. And when we hit this verse again, we return back to this vibe. But the chorus is driven, constantly moving forward. And it's a drastic departure. It has momentum to it that the A section does not have. But what's more interesting about the C section is that we take this driven energy and we shift up the time feel. That's not the right word. The phrasing of it. As I mentioned, there's 2 riffs. One starts on downbeat, one starts halfway between beat 1 and 2 of the beginning of the phrase. It is wild because for a long time, I actually thought that somewhere in here we were dealing with 4.5 beats, which we don't really use half beats in time signatures, so we would probably just double both the top and bottom number. Instead of 4.5 over 4, we have 9 over 8, which 9/8 is a common, unusual time signature. It's basically 4/4 with an extra half of a beat on it. But that wasn't true either. It's just that every 4 bars we shift the primary accent point, which makes it feel quite unusual. You want to headbang on the down beats, and then you want to wait an extra half of a beat than you thought you should, and then headbang off of the down beats. And it's just this ever-shifting cadence, this ever-shifting pulse throughout it. And they jump back and forth between these. Probably the whole idea is 4 riffs long. We get 4 of the downbeat and 4 on the offbeat. That's 8 right there. And then we get 4 of those generally before we do something else. That's a 32 bar phrase, pretty common. We do 32 somewhere else. Just another sound, usually something closer to the more straightforward driven verse, and then we come back to this. A lot of this track is just about oscillating between ideas, whether it's verse and chorus, whether it's downbeat, offbeat, whether it's the downbeat, offbeat idea and the chorus idea. Everything's based around these multiples of 8-bar phrases. Again, something heavily borrowed from blues. And so once again, it's kind of straightforward in its blueprints, in the underlying foundation to this track. It's just another thing that makes the time stuff feel out of place. It feels strange to incorporate it. I don't know why I keep coming back to it, but it is something that stands out to me as not just an outlier, but almost a piece of data that is so far outside of the rest of the data set that you just kind of have to ignore it. There's no way it can be here. It influences the data too heavily. It's bizarre that this data point exists at all in this track. And I can't wrap my mind around it. It is wild. And that's also something that makes me think it's a bit more unintentional, but it adds so much character to the track too. especially if, the song is called In My Time of Dying. The end of the track is I'm dying, repeated over and over, or something like that. We'll get to the lyrics in a bit, but maybe his grasp over time is shifting as he's on his deathbed. I don't know. That would line up artistically phenomenally. But it could just be that maybe they're just not the best with time today. Someone was off their game, and instead of yelling at him, so the rest of the group's just like, we're going to stick with him. Whatever he sets the tempo at any moment, just play along with it. Because I'll tell you from experience, it's usually easier to make it look like there's no problems and get through the gig or get through the take, get through the day, than to intentionally clash because they're not keeping up with the right tempo or whatever. Then you just have friction and antagonism, and it just makes for a really bad recording session or live performance. And that could have just been it right there. Who knows? Hopefully someone does know. I'd love to read an article about this. What else is going on in this track? Yes, the vocal work is what I would expect from Led Zeppelin. But I really enjoy the catchiness towards the end of the track when he starts kind of playing around with ad-libbed, I'm going to assume, sections that focus more on rhythmic and textural ideas. I thought things got really catchy in this section. It was likened to some of the pre-composed stuff that we saw in the chorus, but I thought that at this point we really got into something that struck a rhythmic chord, really funky stuff, and the song started to lock in. I'm not usually a big fan of jammy sections, but as far as just kind of letting the band go and ad-libbing some vocal stuff over it, I thought this was fine, and I started jamming with it and enjoyed that. We also have the melodic stuff from the guitars, which, what do we have, 3 solos in here? 4 solos, maybe? I found it was a bit much, as none of the solos tended to reevaluate anything. They never rebirthed the song in any way. Most of the solos stuck with the same blues chord, stuck with the same range, stuck with the same general ideas. They were fine. I don't have anything against them individually, but as a whole, I just felt like filler for the track. None of them recontextualized what we were exploring. Which, again, if the song is about this, stretching out of time on someone's deathbed, thematically, certainly we have some sort of artistic perspective on this. But, casually, I don't think this would have been too different of a song if it was 6 minutes long instead of 11. But I still enjoyed the solos themselves. Very well played, strong melodic writing, good chances to show off at times. The battling guitars was a cool little idea. Nice to kind of hear the back and forth there. But in the end of the day, I'm going to catch some flack for this. This just sounds like a Led Zeppelin track, a really long, drawn out Led Zeppelin track, but nothing in here really stands out to me too much. It feels like they took one of their traditional 4-minute songs and just started out really slow and then put in more solos than it needed, and now we have an 11-minute epic. And I think it comes down to 2 factors. One, this is blues rock. Blues rock does its thing. But 2 is that I'm also usually not a big fan of tracks that lack dynamics. So it comes down to a personal thing. I would have loved for this song to have explored other chord progressions, other sounds, found a way to explore this emotion with a different set of instruments, a different set of guitar tones, different sets of I think I already said chord progressions. To find different ways to introduce things melodically. That's just not what they wanted to do, though. They wanted to jam out in this track, and that's perfectly fine. It's just I'm not the target audience for this. And I find that to be true of a lot of older music that wouldn't be categorized within a progressive rock umbrella. For 11 minutes, I'm kind of expecting a lot of ideas, not one idea stretched out to its thinnest. But again, that doesn't mean that the song is bad. It doesn't mean that if you enjoy it, that you have bad taste in music or anything like that. You just have a different taste than I do. We can all enjoy different meals, even if we don't necessarily think what the other person is eating is or how they're tasty at all. Let me listen to this on the speakers. Let me check out some lyrics for this, and we'll discuss all of that. All right. First of all, yeah, sounds a lot better on stereos placed at the correct degrees away from you and the correct distance and all that stuff. Um, the imaging sounds a lot better. The illusion of hearing these two hard panned ideas and the brain interpreting it into something more fluid with movement between the sides and the center is a lot clearer on speakers than headphones where the sound is just coming straight in. That's just the difference between mixing back then and mixing today. Today's mixing tends to be done with headphones in mind, where maybe that wasn't as common back then. The other thing I did notice, though, was just how much it wasn't the time that slipped in the intro, in the moodier, bluesier stuff to kick the track off. And when we got to the second verse as well, it's a harmonic slipping as well. There's a lot of slide guitar in here that kind of creates a lack of harmonic information. Much like it's tough to nail down what the tempo is, it's easier to say this is probably it and it's loose. It can be, a little faster, a little slower. It's also easier to say this is the key, but it also encompasses some of these areas around this strict idea of what the key would be. There's a lot of microtonality at play here because of the use of the slide guitar, or I suppose a slide pick on the guitar. Slide guitar work or technique there. But it's just incredible. Oh, and bends too. There's slides and bends in here, and maybe even used simultaneously to get some real crazy control over the precision of pitch. So the song isn't just necessarily difficult to tie down temporally, but also harmonically. I found that as we got further into the track, the harmonic messiness got cleaned up quite a bit and we found more of a harmonic chord to the song, but that intro was wild and I had totally forgotten about it. So I'm glad I went back and heard that because it does add to everything. The only other thing they could have done was made some sort of melodic messiness to pair with that and had the whole trifecta of blurriness, of fogginess there in the opening track. But honestly, I don't know how you would have gone about that without the song kind of falling apart. You certainly need something more traditional to hold everything together, to be the glue for all of these ideas. Now, lyrically, this song is about someone dying. It's pretty straightforward. It says, in my time of dying, I want no one to mourn. I just want you to do, all I want you to do is take my body home so I can die easy. And Jesus is going to make it to my dying bed. Now, this is a very religious track, which is pretty common for blues in general, even predating blues rock. I find a lot of this to be kind of what I would expect, both in the way it's delivered, how much repetition of lines are in here, but also in the general topic too. It says, Jesus is going to meet me. If my wings fail, Lord, please give me another pair. Jesus is going to meet me up in heaven. It says he gets to the gate of heaven and St. Peter won't let him in. He says, I never did any wrong. It says, Gabriel, let me blow your horn. I never did any wrong. Why won't you let me in? We have a guitar solo. Then we come to the bridge. He says, I did some good. I must have did somebody some good. I believe I did. See the smiling faces? Now we have another guitar solo, including the duet. And then he talks about how says, I see him in the streets. I see him in the field and I hear them at my feet and I know it's got to be real. Lord, deliver me. All the wrong that I've done. I only wanted to have some fun. You can hear the angels marching. You can hear them marching. So he's having a bit of an epiphany about his life. He thought he had done a lot of good, maybe even convinced himself this. Maybe he knew he hadn't. He was just trying to talk his way into heaven. I was going to say the gates of heaven, and that long A sound came in, and gates of haven. Anyways, and then he just repeats that it's got to be Jesus who takes him home. He can hear angels singing. He says bye to everyone. He says it's pretty good up here. He starts repeating the name Georgina in an exaggerated way, if you'll recall the finale of this track. And then he says, I'm going to make it my dying. It's interesting that there's probably easy 50 lines on this track, but as far as unique lines, there's probably less than half of that. There is a ton of repetition in this song. Again, pretty typical for blues, but to write it out and read it as poetry, it really drives home how not little substance there is, but how little unique ideas there are. The substance is portrayed through the repetition. It provides emphasis through repeating things. It's interesting though. I don't really get much of this from the music itself. The music is straightforward blues rock, and while I suppose that the opening verse says, "In my time of dying, I don't want anyone to mourn. I just want you to take my body home so I can die easy." Yeah, that's very dreary. I think the opening matches that. But as we increase the intensity of the track, I don't think the verses are meeting the musical intensity. And I find it to be that the music and lyrics are not necessarily one in the same up until the end. I think that the rising energy of the outro works phenomenally well. And for them to finally die, presumably within the final lines, to have the song just start chugging down to a halt works thematically well. We've been here 40 minutes. This is crazy. These are my thoughts on Led Zeppelin's "In My Time of Dying." What did you think of this track? Is there anything that stood out to you? Is there anything you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on? I just noticed I was told to check out the remaster. If you've listened to the original, did you think it was better? Did you think it was worse? Do you think this was actually a pretty good remaster? I know when it comes to the classics, they're kind of hit and miss when they get remade from the engineering side. So, kind of curious, maybe some of the audio issues I had, actually, yeah, they kind of check out with the community. Maybe the old ones didn't have some of those those audio artifacts to them. Let me know. Anything you'd like to add to the conversation, just toss it down into the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, is a link for Linktree. You can go here, find some links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell, I greatly appreciate all three of those. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.